with a free motion and computerized combo quick little lesson. So there's more than one way to skin any rat. There's more than one way to do most anything. I have a computerized system with my machine quilter. I happen to have a HandiQuilter and I have the ProStitcher, and I've upgraded to Premium. There are lots of different ways to do things. I have a gorgeous quilt on here. It's a flower basket hand embroidered on point with plain blocks in between. And I want just a simple little wiggle ditch grid, because I'm using wiggle ditches everywhere else, because the wiggle ditch is a little bit stronger, it's a little more forgiving. Things are not exactly perfectly straight and square everywhere with these vintage quilts. And so anyway, I'm doing a wiggle ditch. So I want a grid, but I want it to be wiggly. So I spent a lot of time trying to do it on the computer, on ArtnStitch and whatnot, and I get kind of frustrated with the computer things. I like it, I love it, but I get very frustrated. And so sometimes it's just a whole lot quicker and easier to just stitch it out by hand and memorize it and repeat it. And anyway, so I want to show you how to do both ways. So anyway, we'll go to the computer first. Now that I've done it a couple of times, I can finally do it on there. Not very well, because I never use a mouse usually, and so I don't draw as prettily with a mouse. But anyway, we'll show you how we do that. So I was able to draw a straight line grid of what I wanted, and then I was tracing over it. I was hoping to create an undulating line by the computer to have a nice pretty little wiggly line, but I could not figure out how to apply a wiggly line to my straight lines. But anyway, so I just memorized wiggles with the mouse. I'm not very good with a mouse, so you can see it didn't turn out quite as pretty and even, but if you get it close, then you can improve it. But anyway, I just memorized that wiggly line, and when you get all the way back to the end, then you save that. There you can see all those little points that we can go and improve and correct and whatnot. But you select all, and then you add your stitches to the drawing, and then you go up and you save it as a file that's going to be in ArtnStitch first of all. You need to save it that way first so you can do things with it. But then once it saves it there with the specific title and name that you want with it, then you select save here in just a moment. There we go. And then I'm going to save it again, save as, and again I can keep the same name basically, but now I need to make sure that it's in my computer system, which is the HandiQuilter, and you save it again, and yeah, there you go. Now you can utilize it. So ta-da! Okay, so for you computery quilters, that's an excellent way to do it. And then you can save it in ArtnStitch first, and then you save it in whichever format your particular quilting machine is. And yeah, and it'll stitch it out. It's really cool. I, on the other hand, I'm more of an artsy-fartsy girl. I'm more of a freehand motion gal, and so I'm more comfortable with my freehand stuff. I like the computer stuff, but I'm not very good at figuring that stuff out. So I'm going to show you another way to do this. So normally what I would do, if I was going to stitch out every single one by hand, I would come over here and I would mark with a chalk pencil. I would mark my 1 inch in on all 4 sides. Okay, and then I would mark my 2 inches and my 2 inches, and I'm actually going to come in 2 inches from each side, and then hope that my center one is forgiving enough and good, and then 2 inches in again, and 2 inches in again. Okay, and so now I've got my basic grid there, and now I'm going to stitch this. And while I stitch it, I'm going to memorize it. So I'm going to start in one corner, and I'm going to lock my stitches first. because I don't want to memorize locking my stitch because it will stitch all the places that I go. So anyway, I'm going to put it right there. I'm going to go into my ProStitcher mode. I'm going to turn off my gears. I'm going to turn on record, and I'm going to hit record. And now I'm going to just stitch, and it's going to record exactly what I do. And I'm just going to do my little wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. And then I'm going to hit record again. Oh, and this one actually is a little nicer than my first one. Just like on the computer, my second and third ones were nicer than my first and second one. But you can see I've memorized this. And now I'm going to save this. I'm going to save my selected item. And I already have one on there, so I'm going to call it slightly different than that. And I want it to save in my cedar quilts blocks, which is where this other one is. And I'm going to name this a 3x3 wiggle grid block, and I'm going to save that. And now I can keep reusing this. So I'm going to go back to my ProStitcher. I'm going to turn on the gears, make sure my needle is up here. Okay, now my machine is hooked back up to everything again, and now watch what I'm going to do. So now I've clipped my threads from the previous one. I'm going to go into area, and I am going to mark my 4 corners of my block. Okay, and then I'm going to reposition. I'm going to modify, reposition, and I'm going to center. And then I'm going to look at this, and is it good enough, or do I need to tweak it a little bit? I can rotate it a little bit. I can reposition it slightly. I'm going to just rotate it a little bit here. And I think that looks very good. That looks good enough. I'm going to baseline, and then I'm going to tell it to stitch it. So I go back up to ProStitcher, hit run again. It's going to bring up my needle in exactly the right spot, and then I'm just going to tell it to start stitching. And it's going to stitch out exactly what I had saved in the previous one. And with hand quilting, when you're free motion quilting, things are not always exactly the same. And with blocks that are not exactly perfectly square, they're not perfect all the time either. And so it's okay that things are not a perfect computerized silicone Barbie doll type stitching here. there you go. And just like that, it has stitched it out. And because I have two and they're slightly different from one another, I'll kind of mix them in and I'll randomly put in block number 1 or block number 2. And I might even memorize a third one so that I can mix them up just a little bit so that it looks more free motion, completely done without being memorized, and no one will ever know. But anyway, so you can stitch them each out. You can mark and place each one and stitch them, or you can find a pattern already done and use it, or you can create your own on the computer and then reuse it, or you can memorize your own freehand and label it and save it and then reuse it. So yeah, it's kind of cool to use both computerized and freehand. And sometimes we start with the computer and tweak it into free motion, and sometimes we start with the free motion and memorize it and tweak it into the computerized. But anyway, there's more than one way to skin any rat. Toodaloo.